name is Jennifer McGuffin. I am the Chief Communications Officer at the law firm of Romanucci Blandin. You will hear today about a lawsuit filed yesterday on behalf of Marilyn Mulero. You will hear from her attorneys, you will hear from Marilyn, and we will introduce advocates and supporters who have come here as well today. We will start with the legal team, then Marilyn, followed by a Q&A. And then at the end of that, we'll give her supporters an opportunity, if they like, to come to the microphone and introduce themselves. Many of them are also exonerates. So you will hear from Attorney Antonio Romanucci, Attorney Carter Grant, Attorney Sam Harton, and Tony will introduce the rest of the team.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today. My name is Antonio Romanucci. I'm one of the founding partners at Romanucci Blandin. And once again, we stand before you as a community to hold the city of Chicago and its corrupt gang of police officers accountable for the decades-long reign of terror on innocent and unsuspecting people. One of them was Marilyn Mulero, who was victimized by disgraced Detective Reynaldo Guevara and now deceased Detective Ernest Halvorsen, after Marilyn had spent 28 years incarcerated, 5 of them on death row. The pain she went through is of a magnitude that cannot be described. But Marilyn will speak to you, and hopefully she will be able to share some of those feelings with you. The questions that beg to be answered is not only how could this happen, but why. Although the truth will be borne out once we begin discovery, we will find the truth. But we do have a good idea of the how and the why. The answer may seem simple, but rather they are rooted in an insidious culture of absolute impunity and inhumanity. The city of Chicago has known for decades that some of its police officers padded arrest and conviction rates through false confessions, coerced statements, physical and mental torture, lies, false photo arrays. And through this decades-long practice, innocent people who never should have been convicted are now left broken and seeking justice to piece together the rest of their lives. Our legal community is fortunate to have fine lawyers from projects and clinics who make it their mission to fight and get the Marilyn Muleros out of prison and back in the world where they always belong. This lawsuit aims to restore some of that freedom to Marilyn by seeking monetary damages. Our community of lawyers and the team assigned to Marilyn's case aims to make it unsustainable for the city of Chicago to protect and defend officers who have no business wearing a patch, wearing a shield, carrying a gun, or certainly enforcing the law. The city must reform. The city must root out the bad apples. The city may no longer turn a blind eye. And if it does, the money taxpayers keep paying will continue to flow out of City Hall. I am grateful for the trust Marilyn has placed in her legal team. Lauren Caseberg, Stephen Hart, Brian Eldridge, Carter Grant, John Marisi, Julie Murphy, John Schwarzinski, Bhavani Ravindra, Sam Harden, Javier Rodriguez, and the paralegals, Morgan Forbes, Morena Fontana, Amanda Marini. This entire team has put in countless of hours to ensure that this lawsuit not only defines who Marilyn was, who she is today, but also seeks accountability and justice. I also want to acknowledge the community that does stand beside and behind Marilyn. We have some of our attendees that I want to just name. Alma Ortiz, Angel Gonzalez, Angel Mendez, Benny Starks, Carl Wilson, Cassandra Greer, James Gibson, Jasmine Risach, Joel Lobsbaker, Mario Casario, We have Jacques Rivera, Medina Mendez, Tammy Coley. Why are they all here? Well, some of them have been exonerated themselves. Some of them, just by definition, by being here, define the pattern and practice of the city of Chicago, of corruption, lies, and falsehoods that these police officers, these detectives who were sworn to protect and serve, actually did quite the opposite. They incarcerated and tortured people. What they did was unthinkable. Their modus operandi was to use physical and psychological torture to elicit false confessions, fabricate evidence, manipulate witnesses into giving false statements, and they were able to do this for decades and decades because the city of Chicago enabled the misconduct. They knew, they should have known, they did nothing about it. And because of them, innocent men and women have served more than 800 years in prison. We still believe there are more victims and survivors of these disgraced officers. And they have yet to come forward. And those lives have been greatly impacted also. And for almost 30 years, Marilyn defended her innocence while being strong for her 2 children who grew up with a mother in prison. 2023 will be a year of great progress in our understanding the scope and the extent of what happened to Marilyn and how far up the chain of command this behavior went. Thank you for this time, and I'd now like to introduce Carter Grant, who is a partner at Hart McLaughlin Eldridge, who has some comments.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Marilyn. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Tony said, my name is Carter Grant. I'm an attorney with the law firm Hart McLaughlin Eldridge. I'm extremely proud to be here today representing Marilyn, standing alongside Tony and the rest of the Romanucci and Blandin team. Marilyn was incarcerated for 28 years for a crime she did not commit. The city of Chicago knows this to be true. The actual killer has confessed multiple times. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office has publicly acknowledged Marilyn's innocence. So the question is, how did Marilyn get here? Well, just after midnight on May 12, 1992, 2 young males were shot and killed in Humboldt Park in Chicago in what was immediately suspected to be an act of gang violence. Shortly thereafter, the Chicago Police Department took a statement from a witness. The witness disclosed that she had run into the actual killer who confessed to the murders. Then and there, the Chicago Police Department knew who the actual killer was. But sadly, the shootings were assigned to now known disgraced detectives, Detective Guevara and Halvorsen. Rather than focusing on the person who had confessed to the shooting, Reynaldo Guevara and Ernest Halvorsen chose corruption, and they set their sights on Marilyn. Detective Guevara and Halvorsen drove Marilyn around gang territory, parading her about, falsely proclaiming that she had killed members of a gang. They subjected her to hours upon hours of torturous interrogation. They denied her access to an attorney despite her multiple pleas for one. They threatened her with a death penalty if she did not falsely confess. And they told her that she would never see her young children again. 21 years old, terrified, exhausted, and psychologically broken, Marilyn did what she ultimately thought she had to escape their torment. She confessed to a crime that she did not commit. Now, Marilyn tried to withdraw her false confession, but despite Detectives Guevara and Halvorsen's misconduct, her attempts were denied. And Detectives Guevara and Halvorsen didn't stop there. They proceeded to coerce witnesses to change their story to support their fabricated narrative. They threatened to plant drugs on witnesses if they did not implicate Marilyn in the shootings. They attributed made-up statements to witnesses who said nothing of the sort. They manipulated police lineups and bribed jailhouse informants for their fabricated testimony. Now, why did the detectives engage in this misconduct? Because their only aim was to secure as many convictions as possible. Truth and innocence notwithstanding. And of course they did it because they could. And they could because this type of misconduct was facilitated and condoned by the city of Chicago for decades. Now, in response to all this, yesterday Maryland filed a 13-count complaint against the city of Chicago, detectives Guevara, Halvorsen, and other involved detectives and supervisors. The complaint alleges violations of federal and state law relating to coercive and illegal interrogations, fabrication of evidence, Maryland's unlawful detention, and failure to disclose evidence, and among other misconduct. Now, none of these allegations are news to the city. At this point, the city of Chicago knows Marilyn spent 28 years in prison as an innocent woman. They know Detective Guevara and Halvorsen were malicious and immoral, and the city knows they are liable. But rather than doing what is right, the city continues to spend tens of millions of dollars defending these disgraced detectives in their misconduct. They continue to pay Detective Guevara's yearly $80,000 pension. So in addition to announcing Maryland's lawsuit, we are calling on the city of Chicago to do what is right. Rather than paying an immoral and evil former detective's pension, rather than paying tens of millions of dollars in attorney's fees to defend these disgraced officers, come to the table, take accountability, and together let's ensure that victims like Marilyn get the compensation that they deserve. Thank you, and at this time I'd like to introduce Attorney Sam Hart from Romanucci Blandin.
Thank you, Carter. My name is Sam Harton. I'm another attorney who represents Maryland. And Maryland has a historic role in civil rights of this country, protecting them in wrongful conviction cases, and especially in terms of how these issues, civil rights violations and wrongful convictions, affect Latina women. She was the first Latina woman ever sentenced to death in Illinois. She's the first woman to be exonerated in a Guevara-related case. And she's the first and only woman exonerated from death row in Illinois. There are approximately 172,000 women locked up in the United States, over 2,000 women in Illinois alone. Based on what we know about Guevara and Halvorsen, it's really hard to believe that there aren't other mothers who have missed out on raising their children, and how many other children have missed out on having their mothers. Marilyn's experience as a young mother, having to find a way to parent a child while in prison, being separated from her children, is something that most of us could not imagine. Here, her children were toddlers when the Chicago Police Department stole her life. They were well into their 30s by the time she got it back. Losing the opportunity to help her children grow is one of the most tragic losses of her wrongful conviction. And given the track record of these defendants, I'm certain she will not be the last to be exonerated and eventually vindicated. Grandmothers, sisters, nieces, mothers whose lives were stolen, just like Marilyn's. And last August, when her conviction was vacated, Marilyn won a decades-long battle for her freedom. But almost a year later, she's still fighting, this time for accountability and for justice. It is our absolute honor to join Marilyn in that fight, and so I'm going to stop talking and let Marilyn come up and tell her story.
Hi everyone, I'm Marilyn, and I was wrongfully convicted of a murder I did not commit, and here I stand with what I call my A-team. I am grateful to have these people here representing me. It took many long years of writing letters, to get support, letting people know that I was innocent. I wrote like 3,000 letters. All were unheard. I've never got a response from nobody. Until my release, then I started getting the support and the help, and I had to branch off from other firms to find my means and the people I was comfortable with working. And I see my other attorney, Marilyn Mulero, over there, who helped me get exonerated. I'm very blessed to have her here. Lauren Caseberg's not here, but she's here in heart and spirit. And you know, it's been a long process. Every day I wake up wondering what it would be like for me to take my children to school. I always thought I would do the same for my grandkids, but they're grown now, you know? They're almost teenagers. Every day I thank God, because he got me where I'm at today. If it wasn't for him, I probably not even would be here. You know, there was times where when you're in there, you kind of give up. Sometimes you don't want to move on because you're like, for what? You know, the system doesn't have any faith in you. So you start kind of like losing that little faith, but that little light keeps shining, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't let that light fade. Sorry. But I stand here today because unlike myself, there's many other innocent people incarcerated. And they need their moment as well, and they're unheard in there, and they need our support. Sometimes we reach out to the media, and the media don't reach out to us because some of the cases are unheard, or they've heard them when they first took place, and then it becomes a dead issue. Don't let a lot of these cases become a dead issue. This is serious. This is very serious. People need to take this, you know, and be a little bit more supportive. You know, I'm out here and I stand along with innocent demand justice. They were at my clemency hearing, and I decided to join the cause because I will not forget about those I left behind. There are many women that are innocent, and these women are not spoken of. They're not thought of. But I promised them that I will be the voices for them. And I stand here, you know, grateful that I have my family support. You know, my sons couldn't be here today, but, or my mom. But, you know, my family's pretty much out of state, so whatever I have is what you see right here, right now. So having to rebuild that relationship, it hasn't been easy. I struggle every day because I'm a broken woman. I'm trying to rebuild myself, but it's hard, it's difficult, it's not easy. And they say, oh, why don't you go see the doctor and get some anxiety pills or PTSD pills? I don't want pills. I didn't rely on pills when I was in there to stay sane, so why should I take pills out here for my anxiety or PTSD? I have a God who's taken care of me, who supported me and saw me through all this. I have family support. If I need them, I can call out to them. I have my brothers in the struggles that I can reach out to if I need them. So, you know, the court system always say, oh, you're okay. No, what the hell, we're not okay. You don't know what we're dealing through inside. We walk around here, we smile, whatever, you know, but no. This is something that we have to live with for the rest of our lives. It doesn't end here. It doesn't end with a civil lawsuit. And I just, I'm grateful everybody's here. Thank you.
as I'm listening to Marilyn, and this is for the whole team, I'm sure what I'm about to say, we all feel that way. You've moved us all. You've moved us all, and we want to fight for you because, you know, when I open up my social media some mornings, I see people who say, oh, another trip around the sun, and they're celebrating a birthday. Well, could you imagine what her trip around the sun was? 28 times? Incarcerated? Wrongfully? Innocently? I have no words. I have no words. My skin is crawling, my hair is on end for you, for the admiration that we have for you being here today. And thinking about those trips around the sun that you took in pure torture.
I just want to say one last thing too, that I want to emphasize the fact that we need to hold those officers accountable for their actions. Please let that be clear that if I had to spend 28 years for a crime I didn't commit, why should they continue to live their life rightfully when they committed a crime as well by placing me on death row? So I hope that, you know, the justice system starts realizing that this immunity law has to change. Something has to give in. They have to pay for their actions just as well. So let's get together and start holding them accountable as well. Thank you.
Marilyn, if you mind.
Yeah, we're at question and answer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You read my mind.
I just have a couple of questions for you, Marilyn, if you don't mind. And obviously you talked about holding them accountable. Let me take you just back to the very beginning. Explain to us just the kind of pressure that you felt you were under that led you to give that confession. Just talk to us about that.
The pressure. When they threaten me with my children, they kind of use your weakness, and they know they're using your children as a weakness. You know, so that was my ultimate pressure. That was when I finally said, the hell with it, I have to sign this paper. My children was more important to me, you know, so I thought that I was signing something to get a lesser time, not that I was going to go to be on death row. So,
And when you say that they threatened you with your children, we're taking them away.
taking them away, yes, and me not being able to see them.
You mentioned that you're a broken woman. Talk to us what the last 3 years have been like since you've been let out.
Difficult. It's it hasn't been an easy roller coaster. I live with my son and my daughter-in-law, but as you know, we all as grown individuals, you have to give them their space back. You have to give them their privacy back. And I call myself doing that, and I call myself trying to get on my feet and have my own place, but unfortunately, things didn't go as I thought I would be able to manage and control having my own place, and difficult not being able to get a job because you're labeled as a criminal, as a murderer, so it's hard. So the funds kind of started deteriorating, and I ended up being homeless for 6 months, sleeping in, you know, parking lots and stuff with my brother and stuff like that, but he helped me through. They don't call that. I kept that from them. Sometimes I stayed in her house and she didn't even know why. She didn't know because I was in the streets. If not, I'm quite sure she would have gave me shelter. She would have took me back. But I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be on my own and try to make it. But it's hard. It's hard out here when society constantly keeps shutting the doors down at you. It's not easy for anyone who is released from prison to get back on their feet. It's easy for some because they have all the resources. But for others, they shut the door in your face and don't want to be bothered with you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And Antonio, Carter, for you both. As we know, there've been dozens of lawsuits filed against Guevara. The city has only settled a handful of them. What are you expecting out of this when you say you're trying to make this untenable for the city?
Right, and I think that's a very good and very fair question, because when you look at the history now behind Guevara and Halvorsen, just these two, because we've had a long history of bad cops in the city, and the city continues to defend them in the face of elected officials saying, Marilyn, you never should have been convicted, you never should have been in jail. So it's hard to understand the city's do not pay policy, defend policy, and delay policy. It's really hard to understand. And so what I meant by that statement was, we do need to make it unsustainable for the city to continue to defend bad core apples who continue to cost the taxpayers literally hundreds of millions of dollars a year. You know, we're trying to find, the city's trying to find new revenue sources. I got one for you. Clean out the City of Chicago Police Department with the officers who shouldn't be there. And you're gonna have a reversal of tide in what's going out. So we do need to continue to bring these legitimate, lawful lawsuits in order to stop this from happening.
And when you say continue to cost the city hundreds of millions of dollars, you're referring to not just payouts, but legal bills, right? If you can just, you know,
Absolutely.
elaborate on that.
So what we know from a recent FOIA that was issued just in the last year or two, I think the city has spent $26 million defending Guevara in court. It's not to be imagined why this money is being spent for a detective, for a police officer who is now, as we now know, is on the Brady Giglio list. So when this team says that these officers are disgraced, they are actually disgraced on paper. They are burned and torched from ever testifying in a courtroom, again, on behalf of the city of Chicago. It is determined that anything that they say in a courtroom is a lie now that they are on the Brady Giglio list. Where's their defense? How is the city going to defend? Well, they're going to defend by saying, are they going to defend by saying, Marilyn, you actually did it? Good luck. Good luck defending when your scorned officers are forever barred from testifying in a courtroom on their own behalf. Guevara will never be able to testify. The best he'll be able to do is say, I plead the fifth. And there's a negative inference every time he does that.
Yeah, the question's a good one. And the point is you're right. And Tony mentioned this, $26 million defending disgraced officers. Sooner or later, Marilyn's gonna get her day in court. We will take this case to trial, and she's gonna get the compensation that she deserves. So why is the city wasting tens and tens of millions of dollars defending officers that, as Tony pointed out, are disgraced? They acknowledge that these are disgraced officers. So why are they spending all this money defending them when ultimately Marilyn's gonna get the compensation that she deserves? And that's why we're standing here.
Any other questions?
Anything that anyone would like to add? It's not been asked.
John?
Nothing.
No, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's if I can just get a second to just get my last thought together here. Why is the city not acknowledging? Well, let me just go back to that Brady list. When I look at that Brady list, I see a number of police officers that I have deposed or have sued and have been at trial who've opened their mouths in a deposition or a courtroom. And I know that everything that they said was a lie. but they weren't on the list yet. And now that I see them on the list, you just say, huh, lie now, lie back then.
And for
And-
those of us who don't speak legalese, what is the Brady list?
I am so sorry. So the Brady-Giglio list is a list that officers are placed on when they have been determined, when they have either been accused or found culpable of some sort of transgression, some sort of lie. So if they lied once where it was documented, it's then assumed that they will lie again. And that's when they are placed on this do not call list. So state's attorneys could never rely, if there are cases pending against these officers, criminal cases, they'll likely be dismissed because these officers are determined to be known liars. So why does the city continue to defend? Well, because they can't pay. And so when you can't pay a bill, what is it that you typically do? You stall it. You wait. It doesn't go away. I don't know of any bill that I've ever had that just goes away. And so that is the city's best defense right now, is to stall.
Would any of the advocates or supporters of Marilyn
Yeah.
like to say anything?
I-
Any exonerees want to say?
Yeah, I would
anything?
love for them, the exonerees who are here and support, please come up, introduce yourself, and tell us what organization you're with.
Good afternoon, my name is Jacques Rivera. I was wrongfully accused and convicted by Reynaldo Guevara back in 1988. I was sentenced to 85 years, I served a term of 21 years. But today's Maryland's moment, I'm just here. I'm currently the president of Innocent Demand Justice. We fight for the wrongfully convicted. Marilyn came on our radar, we backed her up, and we assisted her after my getting out of prison. And make no mistake about it, y'all. We know Detective Reynaldo Guevara, and if y'all don't know him by now, y'all been sleeping. This man, in my case, hid 26 documentations that was found in a file cabinet in police headquarters that said that I wasn't the guy who did it. Do you know how much it costs taxpayers to incarcerate one man a year? That's 21 years of your tax dollars. From him hiding 26 documentations that said I wasn't the guy. Who's to say he didn't do the same thing to Marilyn and everybody else? He can't be trusted. We had judges who called Reynaldo Guevara a liar. Judge Bebo. The appellate court came down and said that he's toxic to the city of Chicago and the police department. And here we are again, like Mr. Tony said, what they do about a bill, they delay it. Do you know how much that's going to cost us, taxpayers? Because they want to delay it because they can't pay it. Ms. Gallardo, I just did a thing with, I didn't do it with Chuck Gowdy, but Chuck Gowdy reported it on Channel 7 about the delays in these payments, about these civil suits. I speak to so many exonerees. I'm a type of advocate for them. And they're willing to sell and go on with their lives. The city of Chicago don't want to do it. And Mr. James Soto, the head attorney for the city of Chicago, I spoke off the record with him. And I'm throwing him underneath the bus now.
Thank you. Thank you.
But,
Thank you.
yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Gibson. I'm James Gibson 1. I'm James Gibson 2. I'm James Gibson 3. I'm the first African American in this nation would ever rule torture since the bottom of slavery. My case sets precedence. There will be no more delays. As I said 4 years ago, I just won bifurcated against the city, the county, and the state. The numbers overwhelming. I think it's 53 or 54 or 55 Guevara overturned convictions. I don't know if it's 53 or 54 or 55, these hundreds of John Burgess cases, these Watts cases. City of Chicago is leading the world, not the nation, in wrongful convictions. Lawyers are going to school from all over the country to come here to Chicago. We're now being elected our third African-American mayor, and now they appointed city council, corporate council. We're being told that they're gonna change some things. So we're gonna see. I'm here today in support of my friend. I founded my own foundation, the Clara and the James Gifford Foundation. You can Google me. And we're gonna be here at all these court dates. Today, as we're doing this press conference, we're down at 219, the Dirksen building, the Henderson brothers. Today, we're down at another court filing another unprecedented lawsuits all over Chicago. We will be heard. I'm saying, get on the land.
Thank you, James. Okay, thank you, everyone. Very much appreciate your time, and if you have any questions.
As a final word, you know, I do want to say, I support this current administration. I think this mayor, Mayor Johnson has the right heart, wants to do the right thing, and we hope he does do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So we've got one more speaker.
My name is Mario Cacharo, and I am an exoneree. I was wrongfully convicted in a Collier County, not in Cook County, but ultimately it was the state of Illinois. The judicial system did this to me, and I will say that now that I've gone on to become an attorney, that I think the glaring factor is that there is no accountability for police officers and the state's attorney's officers, state's attorneys, prosecutors. I do believe that in this particular situation with Guevara, how is it that he has not been charged criminally yet? And we should be looking at that because that could possibly solve these problems in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else speaks Spanish? Okay, I speak Italian, so if you speak Spanish, I'll understand like every fourth word. I'll understand, and then I can string together.